Let's now talk about the G20 summit in depth. Joining me from Johannesburg live is DT India correspondent Amritpal Singh. Let me also welcome Professor Ajay Kumar Dubey from School of International Studies, JNU. Good evening and welcome, sir. Amrit, let me come to you first. G20 Johannesburg has concluded. Prime Minister has boarded flight back home. Give us a sense of how was it for the world leaders to articulate the roadmap ahead without United States presence or endorsement?
I think the central message emerging out of the Johannesburg summit was that the world must unite to provide solutions to the problems that people face around the world. The divides of the developed world, the developing world must finish, technological divide must finish, responsible AI architecture needs to be evolved, and the world needs to work together on that, be it on issues of climate change, be it in issues of poverty alleviation, access to jobs, opportunities. So that was the message. Also, if you look at the Johannesburg Declaration, which was adopted yesterday by world leaders, despite the US, as you say, not being present, the agenda, the priorities, the concerns of the global South were factored in. And this is something which has been, successively built upon in the past 4 years since the presidency has been with the countries of global South, Indonesia, India, Brazil, and now South Africa. One concern, however, that loomed large at the summit was what happens next year, given the adamant attitude of the United States under the presidency of Donald Trump, who doesn't care too much for multilateralism. Is multilateralism under threat? Though the US has not said anything about pulling out of the G20 or weakening the grouping, etc., but choosing to stay out of it, taking a very, adamant stand. Also, that now that the presidency goes back to the global north, will the consensus that emerged on, the concern, factoring in the concerns and priorities of the global south, will it recede? Will the gains made in the past 4 years vanish? Because, Donald Trump clearly has very different views, be it on talent mobility, be it on tariffs, be it on climate change. So that was one concern that I could sense at the summit, but otherwise, broadly, minus the United States, the West now has come around to see that the priorities of the global south, and not as a charity, but as because majority of the population of the world resides in these countries, so everybody has to be taken along. No one they can't afford to leave anyone behind if humanity needs to make a sustainable progress and growth, and the fruits of development have to reach those who need it the most.
Right. Amrit, stay with us. Professor Ajay Kumar Dubey, 2 days of the Leader Summit are behind us now. To what extent did the outcome meet the expectations in G20 Johannesburg, according to you?
From the huge perspective, but from India's perspective, it's a work that is carried from India's G20 summit. From India's perspective, it's the global south agenda that has come very strongly in leaders' declaration. It's the summit that has reconfirmed that the peace and development around the world is indivisible. The north and south divide cannot be just carried on for issues which are of global common. The issues of global governance, the issues of global trade and development is very important. And it has also shown that if some countries of the global north, however important it may be, is not very cooperative, is showing tantrum, still the G20 can carry on its agenda. And the four last summit that had taken place has very strongly conveyed that the global south is going to be an important voice in G20. The Indian message of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that we are one family, we cannot divide issues based on the country's priorities alone, but we have to face them together without undermining what is the top priorities of the global south.
Right. Professor Dubey, also taking a cue from what you're saying, a certain strong country throwing a tantrum will not impact the resolve of the G20. But in this case, it appears that certain strong country is going to be the next leader of the G20. The approach that President Trump has towards, as my colleague was talking about, towards multilateralism in general and G20 in particular, does it make you concerned for the road ahead?
I think partially it concerns because the leadership of the next country is important. But the fact that the entire world, the entire G20 meeting minus United States was together to issue the leaders' declaration, which shows the success and consensus of the summit, is just proving the point that even if one country has some issues, leadership issues or any other issue with the multilateralism, the world is united, both developing world and the developed world, to walk together and to take that in a stride.
Right. Amrit, coming to you, how was India's leadership of the Global South? We saw a lot of it in 2023 when India was the president of the G20. How was it taken forward in this edition in Johannesburg?
Oh, if you look at the Johannesburg declaration, it only builds upon on the New Delhi declaration 2 years ago. The initiatives that New Delhi initiated have come to fruition. For example, on climate change. Now, combating climate change, they've quantified a fund. Whether it remains to be seen whether how much of these commitments are kept by the countries, because the outcomes are not binding on the member countries, even if their leaders agree. And that is something, Shubhendu, is in the nature of multilateral groupings. We've seen countries fall short on their commitments, be it on climate financing, change financing, or arresting climate change, achieving of the SDGs, etc. The world is still found wanting of doing enough. But having said that, I think the proposals that India gave this time around are in sync with the consensus built around the way forward, taking the Global South along. Right from sustainable debt to the role in climate change, combating terrorism, etc. So whatever you find in New Delhi Declaration, it's only a forward movement on that. So I think India has played a very central role in cooperating with the Global South, be it calling conferences on the voice of the Global South. The forward push that India has given to the Global South, or today's IBSA meeting of 3 countries, leading countries from 3 continents who are leaders in their own right in their respective continents and are leaders of the Global South. So I think what was achieved at Johannesburg was only a continuation of the process which sparked off in Bali, was strengthened in New Delhi, carried on in Rio, and to a great extent came to fruition in Johannesburg. Shubhendu?
Right. Professor Dubey, how do you assess Prime Minister Narendra Modi's reading of the priorities of the Global South and the initiatives that he proposes, whether it's global healthcare, critical minerals initiative, African skills multiplier program? Most of them also find a reflection in the final declaration by the leaders of all G20 members.
These are very important issues. These are the issues which India had put on agenda even in New Delhi.
Yes.
These are also the issues where India can make significant contribution to the developing world as well as to the G20. India's proposal on all these issues that you pointed out is also pointing to the strength of India in this area, and then building on this, asking for changes which are in global governance, which are in security architecture, and which are on issues of climate change and development.
The fact that Africa was the venue in 2023 under India's G20 presidency, African Union became a part of this grouping. How do you see the manner in which the focus, while it was largely on the priorities of the Global South, has been specifically on Africa, whether it is wealth inequality, health emergency concerns, to the profits and the benefits of critical mineral supply chains?
Yes. I think you can see that summit taking place in Africa put several issues of African concern on the agenda of this. South Africa took very strong position in terms of inviting large number of delegates, including many from African countries, and putting their agenda, aligning that also with African agenda of 2063, where many of these issues are common to what the G20 has reflected in its leader declarations. So I think India was also pushing African agenda because agenda of countries like Africa and India are common in negotiating with the developed countries' positions on several issues. So I think the solidarity and the focus on global governance and international trade equity is very important, where African countries join hand with India, and it is in the national interest of India as well.
And Amrit, in brief, the final one from you, what would you say was a key takeaway for India from this G20 edition?
I think the key takeaway, Shubhendu, for India was that India's voice of reason at multilateral fora finds resonance with the world, not just the developing world or the emerging economies. India has become a kind of leader in that, but also the developed world, be it the upcoming AI summit that's to be held in February 2026. The concerns that India raises is that the growth, development, moving ahead in new technologies or AI has to be done in a manner that is beneficial to humanity. As the Prime Minister himself put, that any growth or any development, even in technology, has to be human-centric and not finance-centric. Trade has to be trusted. AI has to be safe and secure. And so I think that finds resonance across the world. So I think the key takeaway from India was that while India would have been, assured that the initiative that it took during its presidency, went forward to a great extent, found fruition, though it's still work in progress. But it was a forward movement on building consensus of countries around the world on taking the global south along. So that would be a matter of reassurance for India, but also that the developed world, India is ready to, and the global south is ready to work with the developed world to bridge the differences, one, and also find solutions to our shared problems like the threat from an irresponsible AI or dealing with the disruptive technologies and arresting climate change. Shubhendu.
Amrit, thank you for joining us from Johannesburg with those updates. Also, thank you, Professor Ajay Kumar Dubey, for joining us and sharing your perspective on the G20 and India's engagement.